Hello, welcome to the Woolwinder podcast. My name is Frances and it's so good to be back. It's been about 7 months since I last filmed a podcast. Lots of reasons for that. At some point I'll probably go back into more detail. But really as well, the longer you leave it, the harder it is to get back and to get back filming. You really get out of practice. So here I am. I've been encouraged by a number of ladies from my knit group, quite a few of the viewers, and I went on a trip up to Scotland a few weekends back, and those ladies were encouraging me as well. So as I say, here I am, and here we are back. And there is one other reason why I've been distracted, if you like. And here he is. This is Hugo. And Hugo is 6 months old now. Sorry, 6 months old. And yeah, so he's definitely one of the distractions, aren't you? And he's busy trotting around while I am filming, aren't you? Sniffing around, looking at different things. So let's get started and let's tell you about all the different things that I've been knitting since I last filmed, because actually there is an awful lot. So let's start with, I have on the Fern and Feather sweater by Jennifer Steinglass, which is, I think I was on the yoke when I last spoke to you. So it is now finished. Haven't really worn it much so far because we're just starting to sort of edge into that colder weather, and it is a worsted weight yarn, and so I haven't had a lot of opportunity to wear it so far, but I'm sure I will. It's very comfortable, and I'm looking forward to wearing it. I've managed to succeed in getting a good fit. I knitted the size, check my notes, the size G on the yoke, and then I increased up to a size H for the body by adding extra stitches on the underarm, and then knitting down there, and then when it comes to the sleeves I'm then decreasing back down to that lower size, to the size G. So I've got sleeves that fit me. Correct me. Hello, are you distracting me? Yeah, okay. So this was knitted in the Fibre Company Cumbria Unto the Hills, which is a worsted weight yarn, which I bought from Stitches and Cream in Falmouth. So going back when I was doing right, are you going to start mucking me about? You're going to get silly. You're going to get silly. Okay. One of the things I particularly like about this jumper is actually the way the neck has not got ribbing, but it just starts off in the stocking stitch and just rolls down very slightly there. And actually I quite like that slightly more, well, I guess more a sort of gentle start to the neck. I might actually take that and do that on some other sweaters that I've got planned for this season. So before we roll too much into this season, a couple of the items I've got that I'm just about finishing, and it's one of the reasons I wanted to start talking to you all again, because actually it's quite exciting. There's things that are just finishing, just about going up to be blocking, and it's time to start new projects. And some of the projects that I've picked up are really interesting, and so I'm wanting to share those with you. So the first of these projects that I have finished off is the Huawei, which is a lovely lightweight cardigan. It's cropped, set in sleeves, and it's got this lace insert down the front with the ribbing as well. And last year I knitted in the same yarn, which is a Blue Fern Yarns 4-ply yak, and that was a yellow cardigan. I'll put a photo here to remind anybody that was watching last year that might remember it. I really like that yarn. Really, it came up, made a lovely cardigan, which I've wore this summer. So when I was at the Summer Wool Festival in Bedfordshire, I thought, right, okay, let's get another. I thought, let's get some more. So this time I got it in this lovely green. Now that cardigan was the Felicia pattern, and I found that it does slide slightly off my shoulders. I have got small and rather rounded shoulders, but anyway, it was falling off my shoulders. So I thought I'd try a different pattern this time. And so, as I say, I've gone for this one with the set-in sleeves. It's very pretty cardigan, and actually it was a lot of fun to make. So I started off by casting on for the back, and then the short row shaping along the back here to shape the shoulders, and then you come down the back here, and because it's set in sleeve, you're coming out a bit, so increasing out a bit to create the armholes. Then you put those stitches onto a holder and you pick up the stitches for the front, and then in the front you've got, as I say, this rib and this lovely lace, so you're incorporating that, and you're doing the same short row shaping, although I actually added a few extra rows. I think it was 2 extra sets of short row shaping in the back, which I haven't added in the front, just because I think I do need that little bit of extra room in the back to fit in my shoulders. And then the shaping comes back out in the same way, and then you pick up the stitches from the 2 fronts and the back, so again you're knitting in one piece. At that point I then added some extra stitches under the arms so that I could take it up another size, as I've done before, and that seems to work well for my shape. And then off I went, knitting down the main body. And then when I got to here, so this is a different to the main pattern, I changed the ribbing. So whereas it's just a small amount of ribbing, it's a longer cardigan and it's just a small amount of ribbing on the pattern, I decided to go for a deeper ribbing, and you've got this lovely twisted rib as well, which is really beautiful. You can see, and I really like the effect of that. I think that is really pretty. I have cast off with an Italian bind off, and then picked up the stitches for the sleeve. Now because you're doing a set-in sleeve, you're using short row shaping to create that set-in sleeve. So of course essentially you're adding extra, knitting more on the stitches up here, and then bringing in the other stitches as you're going down. But what I found with the short row shaping was that when I was going from the wrong side to the knit side, so you'd make the short row shape on the wrong side and then knit it in on the right side, I struggled with that one. I had to play around a few times in order to get it sitting there neatly and having a sort of consistent line to it. But I eventually got to a point where, although it is, you can see it's nice and neat, so there's a nice shape to it. So then I've come down to the wrist, and on the pattern there is a rather nice buttonhole band for the wrist, but I decided that I didn't want to do that. I felt, for me, I think it would be a bit too fussy. I'd be worrying about catching it, and I just don't think it would be so comfortable for me. So I went back to this lovely twisted rib, the rib that I liked on the bottom, and I've put that in there. And I have just got the other wristband to do, and I can see that one of my DPNs has fallen out somewhere down there. And then it's going to need to be blocked, and obviously because it's a lace pattern, you can see it's all pulling in there, and that should hopefully all block out beautifully. Yeah, so I'm really pleased with that. It probably will only get worn on the slightly warmer days over the winter, but as we move on into the spring, I'm sure it will get worn an awful lot. It does feel, it's such a comfortable feeling yarn to wear straight against your skin, as a layer to put on over the top over a summer dress or a t-shirt or what have you. So I think I'm going to get lots of wear out of that, and when I've got it blocked up I will show you the finished version. So my next garment that I've nearly finished is the Angelou pattern by Martin Story. This is a Rowan pattern, and I've knitted it before in the Rowan Mordell, and this time I'm knitting it in the Summerlight DK. So it's a double knit pattern, which makes it nice and flexible for using for different things. And I really like this pattern. It's a cropped cardigan with set-in sleeves, and it's got this nice sort of shaped, let's put it here, it's got this nice shaped front to it, which I think looks really nice. So this is going to be my summer version of the Angelou cardigan, and the yellow Mordell one that I did last year, year before, no, I think maybe it was last year, is my winter one, if you like. So it's a pieced cardigan. So I need to block it. Well, I need to finish off the, you can see here I've got the 6 stitches for the neckband just coming on around here, and there's another 6 stitches on that side, so they meet round the back of the neck, and sew those together, and then we're going to block it and then seam, put in the sleeves and seam it. So I've done the shoulders using short row shaping and then 3 needle bind off for the shoulders, because it gives a much neater line. You've got no stepping showing, and also if you've got lines, it means things line up, like in a pattern and what have you, they line up really well. So that's always my go-to now when I'm doing the shoulders on a pieced garment. So yeah, and I like this, again, this deep ribbing is a bit different to the one that we looked at on the other cardigan, but I do like the deep ribbing. So that is that. I do not know why I have got so many ends on this cardigan. There's going to be a bit of sewing in to be done of that, but anyway, it has worked really well, and looking forward to seeing that finished. And it's time for this bag to go over to another project. So before I move on to telling you about my new projects, there's one other project that I'm going to show you today. There are lots more finished projects. These are the things on my needles, and I think that's pretty much all I've got on my needles, apart from a couple of little small bits and pieces, but there's quite a lot of finished things, and I hope to be telling you about those over the next coming months. But there's one more finished project that I've got to show you, and I haven't given her a name yet, but this was a lot of fun to make. I'm not quite sure why, but you can see she's ended up a little bit lopsided, and I'm not really sure why, but I think that kind of adds to the character of it. So Hugo the puppy wants to get hold of it all the time, so I am having to keep her up on a higher shelf. So I really enjoyed making this. It was a really nice, soothing knit to do. Wasn't too taxing. There are lots of short row shape. There is lots of short row shaping in this pattern, but because it's garter stitch, you don't need to then knit in your wraps. So you make the wraps, but you don't need to knit them in. And so actually, you're doing your wrap and turn, but it doesn't make it hard. You haven't got to worry about making sure the wraps are neat and so forth. So I found it a lot of fun to knit. I knitted it. I didn't have any intention of knitting it, and we were at the Summer Wool Festival that I mentioned before back in July in Bedfordshire, and this was on a yarn stand. It was on Lucy Lockett-Land's stand, and she has got a lot of fun stuff. I love her yarns and everything. I've only really recently noticed her stuff, and it's great fun. So this yarn that I've knitted my chicken in is Arabian Nights. That's it there. Yeah, if you like this kind of thing, have a look on their website. There's lots of lovely stuff. I'm certainly going to be getting more, and they supplied the stuff for the kit, so the eyes, the different coloured yarn, and I haven't put this on yet, but one other thing that came in here was a little set. Hang on a moment. of glasses to go on my chicken. So let me see if I can get those. They're probably not actually going to go on because her eyes are not in the right place, but maybe they could go on the front of her nose or something. Yeah, something like that anyway. She's a slightly odd looking chicken, isn't she? But then I think that is the fun. So let me pop her back on the shelf and I can tell you about my next project. So I mentioned at the beginning that I had been on a weekend away in Scotland. It was called Woollen Walking and was organised by Ailey, who's the thoughtful knitter, and she's up at the far top of Scotland, and she came down to Edinburgh along with a friend Martin who organised the tour, and we went off and we visited things like a wool mill and the Scottish tapestry, and we took in some beautiful walks. The colours, of course, we've got the autumn colours, and walking along beside the Clyde and later on the Tweed, were just beautiful, really, really beautiful. And I'll share some pictures actually. I've put a couple of pictures in here so that you can get a little glimpse of how beautiful the countryside was there. It was really lovely. On the middle day that we were on this trip, we went to the Glasgow School of Yarn Festival. I was very keen to try a different festival, so when I saw that this was incorporated in the tour, gave me an extra reason as to why I wanted to do it. Because my thinking was there's a number of yarn shows that I do go along to. So the summer wool one is quite close to me. I went up to the Norfolk yarn show earlier in the year, so I've done a few of them, but quite often, especially when you go back to the same ones, you're seeing the same vendors. Their yarn is lovely, it really is. And if that was all I ever had, that would be absolutely fine. But I did like the idea of coming up to Glasgow and seeing a whole range of different yarn, Scottish yarn. And I definitely wasn't disappointed. The vast majority of what I saw there, I had never seen before. It's a whole new range of yarns, and they were predominantly Scottish. So it was really fun. It was really interesting, and I bought an awful lot. And even though I brought a large suitcase with plenty of space, I ended up really having to sit on my suitcase to get it to close. Yeah, I did buy a lot of yarn. So one of the yarns that I bought was from the Berlin Yarn Company, and this yarn is Hebridean and Cheviot wool, and I'll just pop that up there. And I bought yarn to make the pattern called Waterlands, and this is going to be my main colour, and these two are going to be in the Fair Isle pattern of it. And they had an example knitted up there, which is what inspired me to knit it, and lovely looking pattern, and I particularly love these colours. I think this one in particular, obviously I was having a bit of a green moment, although I did buy a variety of different colours there, but yeah, I think particularly those two I particularly love. So that's what we're going to do. It's the Waterlands pattern, and this, as I say, this yarn is Hebridean and Cheviot wool, and it is dyed yarn from sheep that are bred on crofts in the Outer Hebrides in Scotland. So you couldn't get much more Scottish, could you? This is Berlin Company, so it's Berlin with 2 I's and 2 N's, and I'll put that on the notes if you didn't pick it up when I showed it to you there. It's a slightly rugged yarn, so it's not nearly as soft as the yarn that I've just shown. Well, the Rowan one was a cotton one, of course, but the Hauua cardigan was done in was done in Blue Fern Yarns, which is a very soft yarn. This is less soft, but I'm expecting it to soften up when it's blocked. But even so, you still could wear it fine now, but I think it feels like one of those yarns that's going to soften up a bit when it's blocked as well. But such beautiful colours. They're so lovely. So I'm really looking forward to getting that one started. So I've started doing so far is swatching, and I've already realised I'm going to need to go up a size needle. And in fact, that surprised me. I hardly ever, or I don't think I've ever needed to go up a size needle before, not that I can remember anyway. So I actually went and had a look on Ravelry, and I noticed that other people that have knitted it in the Berlin yarn have had to go up a needle size in order to achieve tension. So it's only actually 20 stitches, whereas a double knit is often 22. So it's 20 stitches. So I guess it's a slightly thicker yarn. So going to go up that needle size, and then now we seem to be achieving yarn, and it looks like from where I've done the Fair Isle, I'll need to go up another size for the Fair Isle part so that we don't get that sort of bulging out a bit where you go return back to the stocking stitch. So that's exciting. So my other new project is Judith pattern by Jackie Blog, and I've used her yarns here, which are the hot butter yarns. I have talked about doing this pattern before. I think the year before last, I originally picked up the pattern when I was at the Summer Wool Festival. This year when I went to the Summer Wool Festival, I thought, right, okay, let's just dive in and get the yarn. And so here we are. Here is the yarn. All these wonderful colours. And actually what gives you a better idea is this little card with all the colours on here. Got all sorts of different colours, a real range there. So this is going to be a lot of fun to knit. I've got to start balling it all up. That will keep me busy for a little while, I think. And then, yeah, it's a simple Fair Isle project. It looks like it's going to be fairly easy as a Fair Isle project goes to get that done. I think I'm going to get started with the Waterlands project because obviously that's Fair Isle just for the yoke. And then once I get beyond that, then I'm just into stocking stitch for that. And then I can pick up the Judith cardigan and get on with that, which is, because it's Fair Isle all the way through, it'll probably slow me down a little bit, but it is fairly straightforward. So I think it'll be a lot. It will be really interesting to see all those colours taking shape and building. And it feels like, do you know, I'm just looking at this and I actually don't know what the makeup of the yarns are. So I will endeavour to try and tell you that next time, or maybe I'll put it on the screen. Actually, that would be good, wouldn't it? But it's, yeah, it's obviously it's wool. I can feel the wool in there, but yeah, I will add up add on the makeup even of what the yarns are on the screen. So that's all my knitting for now. But as I said, there's a lot of projects that I have done between that time when I last spoke to you 7 months ago. You probably remember me talking about lots of summer projects back then, and I was looking down the list actually before I filmed, just trying to remind myself what we talked about before. And I think I've probably started at least 2/3 of what I talked about. No, about 2/3 of what I've talked about, and finished maybe a third. Yeah, there's a number of summer projects, t-shirts and things that I got started and just didn't finish, so they've gone and put aside for next summer, and hopefully I'll find the momentum to pick them up and put more work into them next summer. So my plan is that I will share with you the other things that I have knitted as we progress along, and as I tell you about the other things that I'm getting up to. I just felt that if I showed it all to you now, it would all be a little bit overwhelming, and it's almost nicer to keep it into shorter segments. So what else have I been up to, as well as going on my Woolen Walks trip a couple of weeks ago. We just recently had a canal boat trip, so that's something that I organised with my friend Alison, and it was a really lovely day we had, actually, real beautiful autumn sunshine with all the lovely colours of the leaves, and just sailing down the canal in what is it's funny, actually, when I was talking about it with some of the ladies that I went on the Scottish trip with, you're aware that it's actually the canal route that we're taking through is actually going through some quite busy parts of a town. However, when you're on the canal, it's like you're in another world, and you're kind of in it's you escape. It's peaceful. There's lots of nature. Sometimes we see kingfishers. We saw a heron, which is a big, tall bird, not particularly uncommon, but they're quite a sight when you see them flying. And he was standing in the water looking at us, and then took off and flew past us. And you see obviously lots of other bird life, but everything just goes at that slower pace on the canal, so it does make it really fitting for doing some knitting. So that was really lovely. It was really lovely to catch up with everybody. We've got another knitting group coming on, so we have a knitting group on alternate Fridays that we go to here, and so we've got that this Friday, and then I'm off to Cornwall and going to go and visit my daughter, and we're going to have a week's holiday down there, and Hugo the puppy is going to be coming down with us. He's already been to Cornwall twice, but he does enjoy running around on the beaches, and by this time of year all the beaches have lifted their dog bans and the dogs can get out and really romp along on the beach, so that would be great fun. That just leaves me and Hugo here to say thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. It's been so lovely to be back and talking to you. And yeah, we're going to be back soon. And I'll try and include some interesting shots of us getting out at the end of this video. And then we will see you in a couple of weeks. Until then, take care. Bye-bye.